have an object suspended, if I have an object suspended, let's say an object of mass m is hanging this way, then of course you know the weight mg will be acting downward, then this weight causes a reaction in the string, and this reaction that is being caused in the string is known as the tension in the string. For an hanging mass, the tension will actually be equal to the mg, because what? This tension minus mg will be equal to 0. Why is it equal to 0? Normally when you sum forces together, when you add forces together, of course when you're adding forces together, some of them might be negative, some of them will be positive, based on the direction they are acting, because force is a vector quantity. So when I say sum of forces, you should get what I'm talking about. So whenever you sum up force together, you get a force, a single force, which is the resultant force. And every force can always be expressed using F equals to ma. So which means that if I sum all forces together acting on the body, then it will be equal to ma. Then what now happen if the application of all these forces does not cause the body to accelerate? Definitely the acceleration of the body will become 0. So if acceleration is 0, then summation of all the forces will be equal to 0, because that will be 0 times m, and that was 0. So that is why actually anytime we have a balanced force, that you say the forces are acting in equilibrium. So anytime we have equilibrium force, equilibrium system of forces, or we have a balanced force system, then summation of all these forces will be equal to 0. So that's why we equate to 0 in most cases. Normally we should equate them to ma, that is the resultant force. So get that. Now that's basically what happens when we are dealing with tension. But let's see what happened here. If you have more than one object, you have object A with mass ma, you have object B with mass mb, and you have object C with mass mc. Now this object hanging on a particular string, one thing that we should observe here is that the tension in this string will be different from the tension here, will be different from the tension here. The tension in the three of them will actually be different. Why? It's from what I've explained already the other time. I said if you are hanging a body, then the weight of the body causes a reaction in the string. Then this reaction is called the tension. In fact, this tension counterbalances the weight of an hanging object, an object that is being hung by a string though. Now if we consider tension in A, you will realize that tension in A is produced by these three masses hanging A. I mean the weight of these three masses, when you sum everything together, that will be the one that is producing the tension in A. So with that we can say tension A equals ma plus mb plus mc multiplied by acceleration due to gravity. That's what tension A will be. Now let's see what tension B will be. Now for tension B, ma does not cause any tension in this string. So the only set of masses that are causing tension in the string TB are these two guys, mb and mc, because as their weight is acting downward, then it causes a tension in this string upward here. So we have tension in B will be equal to, that's mb plus mc multiplied by acceleration due to gravity. Now for the tension in C, so we have T equals to mc times g. So this is how you analyze tension in strings. So let me take other cases. If you have a body, let's say we have a platform here, then we decide to place a mass on this platform, then we connect it with a string to this pulley, then we connect another mass here. This mass is hanging, this one is resting. Now look at the combination of what is happening here now. Now the other time I discussed about having an object placed on a platform, on the surface, that there's friction there. Now I also talked about having an object that is hanging. Now I'm now combining the two systems together. Now there's an object that is resting on the surface, and there's an object that is hanging, they are being connected by a string together. Of course, whenever you have string and you have masses, it is very, very, very clear that tension will always come in place whenever you have these two. Have masses and have strings. So the action of the mass on the string will cause a tension in the string. So take note of that. Now, as this thing is hanging, you realize that this object that is resting on this surface, no matter how heavy it is, no matter how heavy, I repeat, it cannot pull this hanging object towards itself. It cannot pull it, neither can it push it. So it cannot really have any effect on this object. The only effect it can have on this hanging body is to keep it from falling. I mean, to resist it from moving downward, from rolling downward. That's the only effect it can have on it. But to now pull or push it, no, it can't. But this object that is hanging, it actually has the capacity, the tendency of pulling this thing downward to itself. Why? Because it is allowed to fall freely. So even with the slightest change in mass of this one, I mean, if this is M2, if we say this is M2 and this is M1, if M2 is just slightly greater than M1, then upon this slight increment in M2 to be greater than M1, you will see that this M1 will actually slide on this surface. But no matter how much you make, even if you make M1 20 times of M2, it will still not pull or push this body to itself. It can only keep it from what? From rolling down. So then I'll see what happened here. One thing is that this guy, they have the same string. And this case is not as if you have this weight hanging as well as M2. So for this situation now, whenever this mass wants to roll, let's assume the mass wants to roll, of course, what will be responsible for the rolling is the weight of the body. That's M2 multiplied by acceleration due to gravity. Now, what will happen to this string? There will be a tension in this string. A tension will occur. Now, the thing is, this M1 has no intention of moving before. In fact, this M1 will remain here, just like Newton's first law of motion that states that for every body that is at rest or that is undergoing a uniform motion, then the body will tend to remain at rest or continue in that uniform motion unless it's acted upon by any other external force. And that's also law of inertia. We'll talk about inertia some other time. Now, which implies that this M1 will always want to remain on this platform as long as no other force has been applied to it for it to move. Now, and if you observe this diagram very well, you will see that there's no external force acting on this M1. I mean, there's no force coming out from anywhere. Now, but the problem of this M1 comes from this string first. What I mean by the problem of this M1 is that this M1 wants to remain at rest. But it cannot remain at rest because there's a string attached to it. That's the first thing. Now, this string that is not attached to it, there's a mass attached to that string as well, which implies that this mass will use the string to pull the mass. So what I'm trying to say is that whatever thing that the weight of this object, the weight of this mass has caused to the string will actually be uniform throughout the string, because the other objects are not hanging up, the other object is resting here. So which implies that the weight of this object, the tension it causes here is the same tension, that will be applied here. Now there are two things that can happen here. The two things that can happen is that either this surface is a rough surface or a smooth surface. And you know what smooth implies? Smooth implies what? Frictionless. And when you have a rough surface, then there's existence of friction. And when there's existence of friction on any surface, then the surface will have its own coefficient of friction. So let's first of all take the case of friction. If friction exists here, so we have frictional force Fr. Of course, the body wants to move this way, then the frictional force will act this way. So let's resolve for both of them separately. Now for this one on the platform, we'll have M1 and Fr. Now there's one thing that there's one concept in physics that most people get wrong, even teachers get it wrong. The concept of, now if I have an object on the floor, and I want to push or pull this object, whichever one I want to do, with a particular force. Let us assume that this is a smooth surface, that is, there's no friction on this surface, and I want to push this. If I ask the question now that will the application of this force be resisted, I mean the acceleration I will give to this mass, does it depend on the weight of this object or not? Everybody will shout yes, that the acceleration of this object, don't forget I've put smooth here, everybody will shout yes, the weight of this object is has effect on the force that I'm applying here, I mean has effect on the acceleration, and that's a no. The weight of this object is actually not determined. It does not determine how well this mass will accelerate upon the application of this force. Let me explain it to you. Why is that? Have you ever pushed a trolley before? Now, a trolley has a tire underneath it. No matter how heavy what you have put inside the trolley is, you'll still be able to, even just a small baby merely touching the trolley will start moving. Now, what is happening is that the tire and the surface has little or no friction. So the guy that is always reinforcing weight whenever we are pushing an object or whenever we are dragging an object on the floor is the frictional force. Let me show you how. You remember we said frictional force equals mu r, and mu r is mu mg. So what's mg? Mg is weight. Now if there is friction on this surface, and if this surface is not smooth, if it is rough, automatically this frictional force will go and reinforce the weight. That weight, come and help me, even though it will not reinforce everything, but it will reinforce the weight multiplied by the what? Coefficient of friction of that surface. That is why it always seems like the weight is actually resisting the force that we are applying on the object. Now, another illustration is, if you have used all these fancy chairs before, they are always very, very heavy, right? But one thing I've noticed about the surface of these chairs resting on the floor is that most of the time they are always smooth surface, and when you place such chairs on a tiled surface, you will realize that you can easily move the chair. Either you can push it to yourself and you can pull it to yourself, and you can push it away from yourself. Why? Because there is little or no friction existing between these two surfaces. So which implies that any heavy object, even if I have a house pitched on somewhere that friction does not exist between the surface of intersection between the house and the place it is resting on, then I can always push the house. That is why in the air where there is no friction, the only friction that tends to exist in here is the drag force, but that one is not existing between surface of intersection. Now if I have a house in the air now, hanging in the air, then no matter how little my force is, then I can always push or pull this house. Is that not amazing? That's amazing. That is why you see when people go to space, they tend to be able to pull anything closer to themselves, and things just float in the air. And all these concepts all together is what we will need to study later on, but I will not say much on that. But so please take note of it today, that the mass or the weight of a body is not responsible for the acceleration caused by a force. Instead, it is the frictional force that affects the acceleration, and the frictional force already has the weight embedded in it. So that's just what is happening here. So let me come back to this question. The reason why I'm saying that is because by the time I want to resolve the forces acting here now, somebody would say that, oh, it should be like T minus Fr minus M1G. No, this M1G will not be present there. So take note of that. And even if there's no friction, then it will only be what? T. That's the only force responsible for the movement there. So if this thing actually accelerates, if it accelerates, that means that T minus Fr equals M1 times the acceleration. I can call this one equation 1. Because if it actually accelerates, then the tension must have been greater than the frictional force. So the tension minus the frictional force will be equal to what? M1 times A. And for this other guy here, if you look at it, we have the mass, we have the weight, M2G, and we have the tension. We have the tension actually. So we have M2G minus the tension will be equal to what? M2 times the acceleration that has occurred. This is our equation 2. Now let me model this equation 2 in another way. Now there are other things that can happen here. Now other thing that can happen here is that we can have the frictional force to be 0, that is, there will be no friction on the surface. That's one. And we can have it that this weight just balances this m1, no acceleration. So let's consider a case whereby there's no friction and there's no acceleration. So if there's no friction and there's no acceleration, definitely the tension in this string will be 0. Yes, that makes sense, because if there's no friction, this will be 0. Frictional force will be 0. We have T equals to m1 times A. And acceleration is 0. Then T equals to what? m1 times 0. So the tension is what? Tension is 0, which implies that the tension did not actually act on this mass as well. So the tension generated in this string is just for the second mass alone. It does not have any effect on this m1, even though the tension will still be felt in this string, but the tension as regards m1 is what? Is 0. So let's rewrite that now. So I won't be taking, so this will be T, in the case where there is no friction, so we have T equals m1a, and this equation 2 still remains what? The same, because it does not have anything to do with friction. So take note of that. And like I said, if there's no acceleration, that implies that what? That implies that if there's no acceleration and there's friction here, that implies that our T from the equation 1 will be equals to Fr. Now take note of this, and in this case our m2g will be equals to the what? Will be equals to the tension. That is if there's no what? If there's no acceleration, acceleration is 0, but there still exists friction on this surface. Then we have what? T equals to Fr, and that means that the frictional force is actually equals to what? Actually equals to the m2g. So no acceleration, but friction still what? But friction still occurs. So that's the. So I've explained everything about force, friction, and what? Tension. Now, if there's anything I've not mentioned, I'll mention them in the course of solving problems. So let's come back for solving of problems. Thank you.